Hi everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Evan Fisher. I'm a second-year student at Columbia Business School. And in this session, we're going to discuss customer adoption of green energy solutions. So to do that, we brought in one of the hottest entrepreneurial ventures in this space, MPOWERD. I had the pleasure of interning with them last spring and then have seen them grow exponentially over the past few months. So it's an exciting time to have them here. On your left, we have Jacques-Philippe Piverger. He's the CEO and co-founder. He previously founded Soleil Global and was a director at PineBridge Investments before. And then on the right, we have John Salzinger, another co-founder and the director of business development. Prior to MPOWERD, he was an executive producer at AP Digital and founded Evo Platinum Processing. And we're very fortunate to have moderation today by Professor Bruce Usher. He's the director of the Social Enterprise Program at Columbia Business School. I'm fortunate enough to be taking a class with him, which is highly recommended for any students in the audience. And he was previously the CEO of Eco Securities, which he built into the largest carbon trading organization in the world, and has an MBA from Harvard. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Professor Usher.
Thank you. Thanks, Evan. So the theme of this conference, the entire Social Enterprise Conference, is engaging customers and clients in social change. And I thought this workshop was a great reflection of that, because what we're going to try to do is engage MPOWERD's customers and clients in the distribution of their product and try to solve some of the problems for them. Can you hear me, by the way? There's like an industrial-sized air conditioner above my head. Excuse me 1 second. There, let's try that. Better? We're good? Come back, great, terrific. Unusual space down here, the party space, though it gets well used at times, believe me. So here's the process we're going to try today. It's sort of a three-step process. First, our company founders, MPOWERD, are going to show you a short video and tell you about the product, pass around, you've got the product, so you can get a feel for what this product is. The second part of the session is going to break up into groups. I would suggest 4 or 5 groups, and just gravitate to one of the boards on the side and spend about 10 minutes as a group coming up with some solutions. And I'll give you a little more instruction about that when we get to that part of it. And the third part, we'll come back together and have you go through what you came up with and sort of open a discussion, get feedback from our founders. The key here is, first of all, this is not like a class, right? I'm not here to teach. This is actually an interactive discussion. The second key point I want to make is, this is a real product for a real need. There's no question that this need is very real, especially in the developing world today, but also for the developed world. And there is no solution. It's not like you should be thinking, going, okay, what's the answer to this problem? We don't know what the answer is, right? This is a real world problem today. So we're all on the same page here, trying to sort it out and solve it. So over to our company today, and I'll let them tell you all about the product. Start the video? Yes, sir.
Lighting a manyatta is a problem because they use firewood.
Iyo na toki kaji tana kispato de toki ama iyo na grata file na dona la tangaji iyo na shaka ju kinyongula tata kaji kaji kunena ta ko na grata ku iya tanine nikiri kunya la tata iyo bagra angkara ngashaka ju ke so mana grata am tata na ku tuta ju mambo ya maso maju nini na ko baguna ya tana toki saidia au
This is a very important light. They will use it to light the house. You don't need paraffin and you don't need firewood because they are cutting a lot of trees to get firewood so that they can use for the light. So the kids can use it to read, they can use it as a light for cooking. Saying if they can get some, then it can really assist them.
Well, can everybody hear me? All right, well, Jacques-Philippe Piverger, as Evan said, co-founder, CEO of MPOWERD. It's a real privilege, and I'm excited to be here with you. I was a business school student not too long ago, and I know how precious Friday mornings are, so I can appreciate the fact that you guys have taken the time to be here with us this morning. And thank you again. Thank you to Bruce for participating, and Evan for welcoming us back despite all that we put him through during the summer. Thank you. I'm going to speak briefly about kind of the genesis of MPOWERD, where we came from, where we are. John is going to go into a little bit more detail with respect to the sales strategy, distribution, what we've done there. And then we're going to try to speak as little as possible and just allow the ideas to ripple and be generated, and we're very excited about that as well. So MPOWERD was only incorporated about 14 months ago, July of last year. So during that time, we've grown tremendously. Prior to that, as was mentioned, my background was mostly in investments. I worked for a few banks, a large asset management firm. Simultaneously, I started a couple NGOs, one with a focus on things that I cared about here domestically, as well as another that was focused on international issues that I cared about. So as you can imagine, it's kind of like Batman, working by day, doing other things by night. So for me, what was compelling about the MPOWERD proposition is that you can do both under one roof. And I think that's something that, especially while you're in business school, you should think about. Doing good doesn't have to get in the way of doing well. I love business. I love huge opportunities, and I think this is one. At the same time, I love people. I love the planet. I have 2 children, and I wanted to still be around after I'm gone. And through this business, you can do it all. And so that's kind of what drew me to this and has allowed me to really focus on the business. During a relative short amount of time, we've grown substantially. We have a great team. John and I are 2 of the co-founders. There are 6 co-founders. We created our prototype, set up manufacturing, raised some capital, went to the Consumer Electronics Show in January, not very long after having gotten started. I had never been to CES. For those who don't know, it's the largest trade show in North America. We spent $1,000 and had a tiny booth in the startup corner. But I'm an entrepreneur through and through, so I was wearing my Luci on my name tag, running around the place, and we came out of there with a lot of interest. Tons of media inquiries, a lot of distribution opportunities internationally, and things have been picking up consistently ever since. And from the business perspective, our vision was big and our objectives were serious, but we still had to do a lot of catching up in order to keep up with that demand and the interest and bring on smart people to help us move the business forward. Our first product is the Luci, a solar-powered lantern. Compact in nature, fits in your pocket, weighs about 4 ounces. Initially, we thought the opportunity would only be in the developing world, but that was still big, 3 billion people that actually need the product. We soon found out that the developed market needed it substantially as well, and John will get into that a bit more shortly. And we have a number of follow-on products. So Luci, we probably have 8 different variations, whether it's recycled material, biodegradable, infrared for night vision, different shapes and sizes, multicolor, and there's a lot of interest for all those. But then separately, we have other products. We have one that will be even smaller and lower cost and allows to hit kind of the bottom of the pyramid more effectively than Luci, although this is still the cost is still rather low, $14.95 retail. And we have another product which will allow us to charge cell phones, and whether it's the small cell phones and the larger PDAs, and we have all those products in the pipeline, and it's a matter of timing and figuring out how to do it effectively. Before I pass it on to John, I want to mention that I think the topic here today is extremely important. There are always innovative products and new ideas. I don't want to say they're a dime a dozen because we do work hard and it's great to have a great idea, but the challenge is always going from the idea and making sure that people accept it. Last week, I went by the Social Good Summit for a few hours on Monday and Tuesday, and on Monday, Vice President Gore spoke about this topic, and that's actually what he focused on. And he likened it to civil rights issues. People always knew that there shouldn't be segregation, there shouldn't be slavery, but until everyone spoke up and said, no, that's not okay. He also talked about LGBT. You see things going on that shouldn't happen. He said, you make it a point to let it know that shouldn't be done. In this day and age, photovoltaic technology, solar power, it's becoming far more ubiquitous, and there's no reason we shouldn't be using it far more than we currently are. And it's incumbent on those of us who know better to spread the gospel, spread the word, and let it be known that it's time for change. So with that, I'll pass it on to my colleague, Mr. John Salzinger. We've known each other for about 15 years, so it's hard to be serious when we're in serious spaces, but we'll do our best. Go ahead.
Don't ever call me Mr. John Salzinger again. So there's a bunch of lights out in the audience, I think. So if anyone has them, you can sort of hold them up. Great, thank you. This is a pretty bad room to show off the light and its effect, but we'll do it anyway. So on the bottom, if you turn the light like this and sort of show it to the people around you, you'll notice that that's the solar panel. And in 8 hours of direct sunlight or incandescent light, it's a little more than 8 hours, this will fully charge. We have 10 LEDs on the inside. 10 LEDs are significant because it's a lantern. It's not a task light, a spotlight, or a flashlight. And in the developing world, that means everyone in the room can read, not one person. So it's not a choice as to who has the opportunity to get education or this, that, the other. So it's a very effective tool. It's waterproof down to a meter, which is important in a country such as India, where there's monsoons. It's very durable. Hopefully that still works. Let's try. So if everyone could push the button on the bottom, in the middle of the panel, thankfully, it still works. If you hit it for a second time, it'll be a brighter light, and a third time in the developed world will allow for a party, but in the developed world will be a beacon for emergency. The light itself is a vehicle, and we're selling in two different markets. We're selling in the developed and the developing world, and our company is filled with hybrids. And just to kind of touch on a little of the stuff that Jacques talked about, he probably differs slightly than I do, but I don't really enjoy the conscious capitalist, the social impact, all of these sort of tags that are put on companies that sort of put you in a box. And this part of it, he agrees. We're just a good company, and we're very happy to be a for-profit company, and we make a product, and we've developed it around need, not want. So you don't need a focus group. You go to Haiti or Ghana or anywhere around the world where people are in a dire need of energy, and you know the problem. You see it. It's glaring. And it affects in all sorts of areas such as health and education, work, etc. So basically for us, the developing world and developed world have an interesting relationship. So right now, if any of you here know retail in the States, in order to sell into retail in the States, you need a lot of money or great credit. And all of that is very difficult to come by because net 30, net 60, net 90, meaning that you need to float money for orders to a Target, to an REI, to a Bass Pro, etc. The way we, other than investment and some funding, some interesting instruments that Jacques works way too hard on every day, one of the ways that we allow for this to happen is we sell into the developing world to major distributors. And the terms there are a lot more friendly. And the terms there, they pay up front. So that funds a lot of our growth in the developed world. That relationship changes and then sort of impacts our mission later on. The developed world growth is sort of, you get a test and then shoots up exponentially. And it does this exponentially. It does this Target, REI. These are stores that have thousands of locations. So if it tests well, which we found it has, all of a sudden it shoots up. When that happens, that's wonderful. It's a great business case, right? But it's also great for us because we can lower our manufacturing costs. That we can then transfer to the BOP, the bottom of the pyramid in the developing world. Those savings, that cost. So now we're not going through aid organizations necessarily or the UN where they're giving lights away. We're selling this. And it's a profit for us, but we're selling it to someone at a very low price who can afford to buy it, a woman in Ghana in an informal market. She can then resell it to an end consumer that can afford to pay for it. So it's cliche, but it's the fishing rod instead of the fish. So I don't want to talk about verticals. I don't want to talk about much more of where we're selling. We're selling into a lot of different markets in the US and internationally into retail. We're selling into a lot of different areas such as government, this, that, and the other, as well as the distributors in the rest of the world. But I think this session that Evan so kindly put together and Bruce allowed us to come here and give his time is important, because if you guys come up with a solution or an idea that I haven't heard, I'm going to lose $1 because I bet $1 with Evan. That way I come out of here a winner either way. So it would be wonderful. Please, all your ideas, think out of the box, go crazy. There's nothing that's wrong. This is a problem that, as Bruce said, is not solved, but it is solvable. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
So here's a plan. Let's take about 15 minutes in groups, and the issue to focus on is customer adoption. Okay, that's the issue of this product. I think be creative. Anything's on the table. You could focus on either or both markets. You could focus on business-to-business solutions or business-to-consumer solutions. Keep in mind that the solution here is not to throw a lot of money into marketing. That's, first of all, I think ineffective from my personal experience and not something that MPOWERD will be doing. And also think about what other institutions are out there, for-profit companies, nonprofits, NGOs, governments. Who else perhaps has a stake in this and could be the right organization to work with or partner with to drive this customer adoption. And the last point I'll make, just to reinforce what was said in the presentation, I don't know this particular product, but I'm very familiar with the need, particularly in the developing world from other work I've done. There's no question about the need. The product fills a need, and the economics work. It's not an issue convincing someone to buy a product they don't need or pay for something that's poor economics for them. It actually saves them money based on what they do today. So that's not the issue. The issue is how do you get people to use it, to engage with it. So that's really what to think about. So in terms of breaking up the groups, shall we do, let's try 4 groups. That way we can, right, I only see one. Is there more than one? Oh, there's a few back. So some people want to go to the back. Just make yourself friendly with your local people, and I'll come around and talk to each group individually, but we'll start again at like 10:15, so about 15 minutes. Okay, let's get to the next part of this, and so here's what we want to try doing. The spokesperson for each group is going to go through your ideas on customer adoption. The hardest part of this whole session is keeping your ideas in 30 seconds or less. So really, really brief, because our time is very, very tight. Okay, so tell us what you guys came up with, and then I've asked our MPOWERD friends to give you immediate feedback. I can say, we're already doing some of that, we tried that, it was a complete disaster. Anything they want. Again, very quick feedback. Go around real quick. And then we'll just open it up to, we'll open up to them telling you, in fact, what they're doing. And then just general Q&A and feedback and discussion and wrap up. So why don't you go first? Over to you. Please speak as loudly. Oh, we'll use the mic.
Thank you. Our group thought about different approaches for the developing market and the developed markets. We focused on the developing markets because that's where most of the need was. And I'll come on this side. And we had several ideas. First, mostly related to the distribution channels, using corporate partnerships with existing CSR arms. I'm sure you have thought about these issues and you have tried some of them, with Coca-Cola and Avon. These organizations already have established distribution channels or individual distributor like Avon. Using market-free approach instead of giveaway programs, and piggyback on local organizations like schools for education to actually provide education about the product, and partner with other institutions such as MFIs for end-user financing to bundle the product with other MFI products. Also looking at community representatives who can identify key local drivers and conduits to distribution. And cell phones, leverage cell phones proliferation in developing markets such as Africa and the rest of the world to co-sell such products with cell phones and provide a payment plan through cell phones. In the developed markets, we were thinking about key markets to be, and packaging and branding to be as camping, outdoors, disaster relief kits, in the Home Depot type companies. Again, lights for cars, any emergency kit that could be developed to spread the awareness and the idea.
All right, group one. Thank you. Good job. Just quickly going through, I think the first thing you mentioned was the CSR. You gave an example of Coke, for example. So we have thought about that. We haven't been extremely effective with that yet, but we've only been distributing for a short period of time. We're currently selling in 40 countries, about half developing. Coke in particular, one of our next products is a tubular shaped kit that fits into an empty bottle. And so we're speaking to Coke and some of the large bottlers. And so, like, what are you thinking? Free market approach? Or whichever?
Well, I guess I'll talk about the cell phones because, first of all, that's fantastic. We wish you had been in the company day one because that would have saved us a lot of time. It's very good. In terms of the cell phones and the carriers, that's also very good. So penetration is very high, sometimes over 100% in the developing world, but the energy to charge those phones is drastically inefficient, and people have to go share one station, et cetera. So we have a device called Mobi coming out that's going to also do lantern and phone charging. So that's very good. And the carriers, that's an excellent option because it's also a possibility to co-brand. So possibly when there's a service contract fulfilled, they can offer this co-branded Digicel, Verizon, whoever it is, and they build it into the price of the service. So companies are interested in that, so that's very good.
Yeah. And I think one other thing that I would comment on is the local partners. So we've developed something that we call the Special Project Partners, and we have a program called the Give Luci program. And through this, we partner with local NGOs. We have two currently, one that does work in Tanzania and Congo called the New Course, another called the Amazon Conservation Association that does work in the Amazonian region of Latin America. And so that allows us to benefit from their knowledge of the terrain, provide them with products that they can then provide to people and communities in a more effective manner. And we're constantly looking to refine the process and ensure that we're doing our Give Luci program in the best way possible so that it can become more sustainable. But
lastly, I'll just say the developed world approach is perfect.
That sums it up for us. Thank you very much. Over to group two.
Thank you.
Gene.
Great. Well, The easy part about going second is that we had a lot of the same ideas. From the distribution partners, something else that we thought of would be governmental organizations within the US. That would be FEMA. Across the world, it can be the military to give to soldiers who are out in the field. And we also think, like FEMA, anyone who's doing disaster relief, be that the Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, across the world could use Luci. And then we also talk a lot about ways to drive adoption. So some things we talked about were referral bonuses or discounts. One person gets it, they get a discount if their friend gets it, as well as initial incentives up front, bundling with other domestic technologies like clean cook stoves. And something else we talked about would be considering gender dynamics, or who makes the purchasing decision in the home and who actually makes decisions about what goes in the home. And targeting students, healthcare providers, people who can benefit from who benefit from Luci, to use them as evangelists. And then something else we talked about would be determining who sells fuel like kerosene in developing communities, and seeing, can you persuade them to switch their business where they're still supplying the same need for the community, but instead of selling kerosene or gas, they're selling Luci.
Excellent job, group 2. Thank you. Maybe I'll start with the last one. When we first set out to distribute Luci's, we thought governments and NGOs would be a key market, because naturally they're focused on those issues that Luci can address in a real tangible way, and we're connected, we can make it happen. But it ended up being very challenging. And I like the fact that you thought about going to companies that are currently selling kerosene or selling something else. And what we found over the last 7-8 months is those are the companies we've been able to most effectively partner with. So whether it's an energy company in Angola or a food company in India, they already have that consumer base that would benefit from using Luci, and they see the benefit, and they tend to move a lot quicker than the NGOs and governments. So the NGOs and governments have all been keen and excited about our product, but we have yet to close a big deal with one of them. Whereas the private sector, they see the opportunity, they want to be the first mover, and their first, second, or third question is usually, can I get an exclusive?
I'll just add to that. I mean, we're friends with the head of partnerships at the UN, and every time I go visit him, he directs me to private sector connections. And it's not because he doesn't believe in what he does, but it takes a very long time, and unless you're involved early on in the inception of some of the programming, it doesn't quite happen. I will say we have had some success. So Shelter Box is an organization, it's an emergency kit organization that has adopted our lights. So again, right on point. I'll jump into your clean cook stove idea of partnering, and that's perfect. And believe it or not, we're talking to a company called Wonder Bag. I definitely suggest any of you take a look and look at their technology. And they have an amazing sort of clean cook stove. It's like a bean bag, believe it or not. It sits out in the sun, solar, and has a divot in the middle that nicely fits a Luci right in it. So we're talking to a lot of government partners for that. But again, those things take a long time.
The one last thing I'll mention with respect to the options you threw out there is that I think it's clear that there was some knowledge and expertise on development work on that team, because you went into a lot of detail that most people wouldn't think about. So for example, the primary care providers in many developing countries where we look to distribute Luci, it's known that the women just tend to be better, more responsible with whatever you provide to them. The gentlemen, we just waste the money spending on things that aren't as useful to the family. So in as far as you can make that connection with the primary care provider, which tends to be the women in the communities, you tend to get a much greater impact on the overall community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, the list keeps getting narrower and narrower. We have a lot of overlap as well. We talked a little bit about partnering with hospitals and ministries of health. On the retail side, on the bundling point, working with agricultural suppliers for commodities such as seeds, fertilizers, those sorts of commodities that would be more relevant to a rural customer. We also talked about discounting, particularly on your product that charges the cell phone, but working with mobile carriers on that. One little idea that we had was, in terms of education, was to have a celebrity endorsement, perhaps marathon runners running from village to village, showing the people the product as a marketing campaign. We also talked about teaming up with gas stations, petrol stations to sell the product. On the developed world side, a lot of overlap with that, but we talked about home goods stores, Home Depot, those sorts of places, and event planning places for outdoor lighting. And then, similar to the Tom's model, although it doesn't seem like you'd be displacing any local shoemakers with a buy one, give one model, but it might be even more effective for what you're doing if you're selling at an REI or a store in the developed world.
You want to start?
Sure. So maybe I'll start with the buy one, give one. So that was originally what we were doing, actually. So we had a price point of $24.95, and it resonated with many people, especially people that live in New York. But what we found is that as we started to speak to the retailers and we wanted to get scale, they laughed at the price. They said, there's no way you can sell this for $24.95. Or you could, but it wouldn't get the scale that they want. And so that drove the price down. And so our current MSRP is $14.95. And what we have now is on every package, we have a call to action, which talks about our Give Luci program. And so people can go on our site and donate a product to one of our partners at a discounted price. So that's how we've addressed it. But the buy one, give one, you brought up Tom's, for example. The average Tom, you're talking $50 to $80 per shoe, and their cost is about the same as our product. So they're able to do that, but we don't have that level of margin in our product.
Yeah, I'll just add one other thing is everyone in this room probably shares a very similar DNA. And I'm sure many of your buying habits take into account, green and social impact. But it's just not the case in this country or in other retail around the world. It might be something for polite clapping and good conversation, but when it comes down to actually making purchases, it's not the driving factor. So again, focusing on being a profitable company is the key. And I will add something to that I spoke to a group in the corner about. With that profit, we're also able to not only lower the manufacturing costs, but we're able to develop other products. You can't penetrate the bottom of the pyramid without being a successful company with the ability to grow and to bring in experts and to pay for the things that you need in terms of logistics and operations and costing. So one of those examples is the product that Jacques mentioned about the bottle. That's going to be about half the price, and that's going to be called Genie. So that's a really exciting development that would not happen if we didn't grow in profitability.
Magic in a bottle. Think about that. You're supposed to laugh. All right. Other point you brought up, celebrity endorsements, is something that we've looked at and we've benefited from, just in terms of various high-profile individuals being fond of our very dear Luci, taking pictures, talking about her. Richard Branson included Luci in his Screw Business as Usual book because of the approach, B Corp, double bottom line orientation. We've had various heads of state talk about our whole Luci's in pictures, Blake Lively, all types of folks who have been spotted trying to get a photo op with Luci, and she's very kind about it. And actually, it's true. It's helpful as far as driving traffic and interest, but you have to have substance behind it in order to build a real business. I remember towards the earlier part of the year, Q1, we were really getting a ton of press. I mean, we still continue to get press, but we were getting so much press, more than you could reasonably expect for such a new company. and for all intents and purposes, we hadn't done that much yet. And so we had to make a conscious decision to say, hey, this is great, but we need to convert that visibility and press into actual sales. And that's in large part what we've been focused on as well. And just to piggyback what John was saying, the mission part is very important to us. It's part of the ethos of the company. That's why we incorporated it as a B Corp. We're going to constantly evolve and figure out what that looks like and how we're able to have that impact as efficient and effectively as possible. But it's still very important to every decision that we make.
I'm just going to ask Alpha Group 4 to go next. We have a little less than 10 minutes. So we'll move on to the next two groups pretty quick. And then,
sure.
All right, so in the interest of time, I'm only going to focus on our points that haven't been gobbled up yet. On the developing side, we were, as a way to try and get it into the hands of people that help them to come up with the money to afford to purchase your lamp, going through savings and lending groups like CARE, Acción, Finca, Oxfam. But we think that training community members and having a spokesperson per small town or small village or community is a good way to penetrate the market. And I mean, we know that the $15, it's not a problem for someone to come up with $15 in 1 month. It's a problem for them to come up with it up front. So I know a model that works well is like a sort of piggy bank model. Now it involves giving them the lantern up front, but giving them a little piggy bank where each day they put in the 50 cents that they would have spent on kerosene, they put it into the can, and then at the end of the month they have that $15 to pay off the lantern. On the we think that pushing the education route is a good method as well. Going through schools, they could be using it as a learning tool, as well teaching the kids about the science behind it, as well as keeping the lights on at later hours. Going through the Gates Foundation, or even as we heard upstairs, I mean, maybe setting up some accounts through Donors Choose, so that way you could link the developed world, people that want to connect, set up Donors Choose accounts for schools in the developing world. And then fully here on the developed world, to get it into the hands of people that want it most, in addition to gardening centers and the Home Depots and whatnot, we were thinking that you could target farmers markets. I mean, they're all through the city, and people are bringing their compost there, paying extra dollars for their organic vegetables. If you had the lanterns there on display, perhaps in the fall hours to keep the stalls lit, we think that'd be great for party planners as well. I mean, if you were to string up a bunch of these, maybe for an outdoor wedding event that wanted a green theme or something. And finally, music festivals. I mean, they go all day. People can be lighting them up at night, throwing them around in the air at an actual concert and whatnot, selling them at the booths. Yeah, I think it'd fly. Thanks. Yeah, Luci rave.
Yeah, we like where you're going with it.
I mean, again, everything you said, we would have liked to have met your group early on as well, possibly work together. With the microfinance idea, which was brought up earlier as well, it's a great idea. The key is to find the type of company that's responsible, and that the microfinance institution ensures that there's training involved in it, and that things that we take for granted, like saving habits and things like that, are really taught in a manner so that people don't actually end up getting harmed through that. Women's buying groups is a little closer to what you're talking about, I think, with some of the groups in Africa, and we have been looking into that. So in other words, they pool their resources so that one day this hut or this house gets a Luci, another week this one, and on like that. That's pretty good. Jump in.
Sure, I think you guys came up with some great ideas. And we've hit on so many different things already with the first few groups. I think the music festivals ties into the whole idea of using popular culture to make Luci become part of the common vernacular, if you will, and just something that's exciting and interesting and that you just want to participate. It's a movement. Luci Palooza, there we go. And we didn't talk about the derivation of Luci, but there's the Latin word lux and a bunch of other languages, luz and luce and everything else. There's the oldest fossil, which is called Luci, and where you're going, the Beatles song, Lucy in the Sky. And so for us, it's almost as important that we make sure there's a strong brand message and that it's packaged properly. If you think about the different names of the various products that John mentioned, We have Luci, ends with the I. We have Genie, ends with the I. We have Moby. Everything, we're very particular about all that, and we want to create. So this is kind of like the iPhone of the solar lantern space, and we want to create that kind of energy so that people just gravitate towards MPOWERD's products.
I'd also say this is a good opportunity to introduce another technique that we have, where we have VAR systems set up in our company, so value-added resellers, whereby people receive commission for bringing in leads to the company. And that's really allowed us to get 1 and 2 degrees of separation between almost anyone that we want to reach. So the Gates Foundation is a good example of that, and we have some leads in there too. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. So I think we wanted to frame this at first in terms of the challenges. So the challenges are the upfront cost, the challenges are distribution, and the challenges are awareness. I would also add identifying the right customers. So the solutions are going to be around channels, they're going to be around customers, they're going to be around partners, and they're going to be around initiatives. So to go beyond what has already been mentioned, so the mobile phone model takes 2 forms. So I think you should have a pilot. We think you should have a pilot of having sort of sellers on the side of the road who make money via commission, just the way you do with mobile phones, because that feeds off the entrepreneurialism of all of those kinds of individuals. You should target oil companies, large companies that mining companies, et cetera, so that are isolated. And so to that end, I think China would actually be a really good market for you guys because of all the things that are going out in the western side of China that are more isolated from the eastern parts. We think that construction companies similarly would be really good, particularly in the developing markets, because they're going to be using diesel to power the on-site constructions. That could also happen in the developed world too. The other thing we would recommend is going off of microfinance institutions, hiring microfinance institution workers to actually sell your stuff. So they're going to be checking in on the people that they made loans to, once or twice a month. What are they doing in the rest of the time? You can hire them on a commission base as well. And then similarly, an initiative that we were thinking about is, instead of doing the Tom's buy one, get one model, giving away, say, 500 out of the 90,000, because we heard about the shipping container, giving away 500 of these lanterns to entrepreneurs to then sell them. So one of the things that happens with Tom's in the disrupting of the markets is that people get them and then they sell them because they can make the entire profit of their markup. I think you should do the same thing to raise awareness. And then finally, we think book vendors are an ideal channel for you to sell, because people who are buying books in developing countries are probably going to need lighting as well. And so it's a great synergy there.
Great ideas. Thank you very much, Group 5. I like the way that you broke that up in terms of the need and solution. The book vendors is something that I think is a clear opportunity. It ties into one of the key Millennium Development Goals and education. And it really resonates with everyone. Everyone wants to be educated, or they want their children to be educated, and they're willing to spend in order to make that happen. And it's clear what the benefit is because it's light. So that's something that we'd love to explore in terms of figuring out how to do that effectively.
Again, all really applicable. The giveaways to entrepreneurs, we're doing that. And we do that through our Give Light program, so you're right on there. The mobile phone selling sort of in different ways. So a mobile phone is kind of a microcosm of our whole strategy. So we have 2 different Mobis. One is Mobi and one is Mobi for PDAs as opposed to just flip phones. And the one that's for PDAs is going to sell more in developed markets and be able to lower the price for the one that sells to basically what our Nokia is in the developing world.
And the other thing I would mention is, and actually I think Group 3 mentioned gas companies and you guys mentioned oil companies, but we didn't address it before. One of the leaders in the space has a partnership with Total, which was one of the largest oil companies in the world. And that's been very effective for them. So Total now sells their product at the pumps throughout sub-Saharan Africa. And I'm talking 10x in terms of sales since that happened. So in as far as we can get one of the larger oil companies to do the same with a more compelling, in our opinion, solar lantern, that would be very nice.
Thank you.
That's terrific. Unfortunately, we've actually run over time, and I think that's a testament to the fact it's a very interesting company, very interesting product, and you guys gave a lot of great ideas and feedback. And I think I've certainly learned a lot about what you're doing in the interaction. I thought that was a nice way of doing it rather than normal sort of pitch and just telling you what you're all about. So first of all, join me in thanking John and Philippe for coming here today. And since we didn't have a chance for actually a Q&A, you have a few minutes now. If people want to come up and chat for a few minutes longer, that'd be okay. So if you do have specific questions and you want to come mob them right now, please do so. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.